Welcome to Inside the Birds pregame live presented by Garage Beer. It's beer-flavored beer. Find yours at drinkgaragebeer.com. Have the Philadelphia Eagles fallen off the rails, or was last Sunday's 42-19 loss against the Niners at home just a minor detour for a team that still has the NFL's best record? Hey, we'll know more today as the Eagles take on yet another playoff team from last year, the rival Dallas Cowboys at AT&T Stadium, where the Cowboys have won 14 consecutive games. That's a lot. I'm Geoff Mosher alongside my Inside the Birds co-host, Adam Caplan. Joining us, as always, is former Eagles wide receiver Jason Avant, and from NFL Films, our tape breakdown master, Greg Cosell. We've got an amazing show planned with so many topics to cover. Happy holidays, happy Hanukkah to those who celebrate. And Jason, I'm going to start with you on this one, man, because a lot of negativity in the city. You remember what that's like as a former Eagle. The sports talk, the media, the fans calling in. This guy's got to get fired. That guy's got. I mean, the Eagles were emasculated at home against the 49ers. So from a player's perspective, we dwell on it, fans dwell on it, everybody's still been thinking about it. How fast do players, especially on good teams like this, flush that out? How fast do they move on?
Well, you're designed to throw out the noise. At least that's the way it used to be. That because you were always taught outside forces, inside forces, listen to what's in the locker room and what's in the building rather than what's outside the building. It's a little bit harder for this generation because everyone's infatuation with social media and how much they see information. You see some of the players like Darius Slay talking back and forth online with, Seth Joyner and things like that. That's not something that would happen of yesteryear because there was a barrier between the media and the players, which there had to be some type of network operator that would have to come over to the stadium, interview a guy with a camera. Now you can just, go back and forth on your phone. So I think they're hearing the noise. And the thing about it is that you said the word correctly. They were emasculated. That wasn't just a loss. They were taken to the woodshed. They were treated like little boys in that game in a lot of aspects of it. And it came down to some things that you don't see from an NFL football team. You can get beat as an NFL football team. You don't normally get punked as an NFL football team. And I believe the Eagles got punked. And I'm being very kind.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're going to talk as we get closer into the show, Jay, not just about that, but sort of the tone that has to be set when everybody returns to the NovaCare complex a day or two later as you prepare for a huge game against the Dallas Cowboys. We'll get into that a little bit, but yes. And those barriers that used to exist where social media did not, maybe those weren't such a bad thing back in the day. All right. Well, the whole city was down on the Eagles all week. We'll see how they respond. Maybe it's a good thing that it was Dallas week, as I'm sure the Eagles are fired up to get back on the field and look to prove any of their new skeptics wrong. And we're going to break this game down from every angle over the next 2 hours. So much to cover from a schematic standpoint. Can't wait to get into it. For those watching, please share and like the show on whatever platform you're viewing it on. If you're a YouTube watcher, please hit that subscribe button for us about as many times as you can. We really appreciate it. If you submit a question for us during the show, we'll try to get it answered live. We'll also try to get to your score predictions if we can. Let's get into the X's and O's in a second. But as always, we like to start off with a big picture view at this. Now, Greg, I'm going to start with you. We will, during the show, individually get into some of the things with the Eagles that we're seeing: a lack of pass rush on defense, a lack of an affecting run game on offense. But if I were to throw those at you right now and say which one sort of more surprises you about this year's Eagles team, one or the other, is there one that would jump out at you? You'd say, man, I didn't see that coming.
I would have to say pass rush because their entire defense was built around that a year ago. And again, we'll get into this more specifics about it. But let's remember 1 year ago, they led the NFL in sacks and had far and away the most third down sacks in the league. This year, they have far and away the fewest third down sacks in the league. And I don't think any of us saw that coming based on the personnel that they have. And what that has led to, or partly led to, is the fact that they are the worst third down defense in the league. I know I did not see either one of those things coming.
Sure. And I look forward to later in the show talking, all of us going into the why of that. Why is their pass rush on third down, especially not getting home? What are people doing? We will definitely get into that. Jason, I want to sort of carry on what you were talking about because you played for Andy Reid most of your career, and he is known as one of the best tone setters in the NFL, especially coming off a loss. So this was the worst loss of Nick Sirianni's career, not in points, but the last time they lost by more points, he was starting backups against Dallas. So this is sort of the worst loss he's coming off, regular season loss he's coming off of. How important is the tone that he presents here as his head coach dealing with this newfound adversity, right? How important is that going through the week this week?
Well, I just think that it has to be, this was a kumbaya type of moment for the team. And I'm pretty sure that there was some players meetings and also some coaches meetings, because this is one of those things you hear people say throughout the tape. No, this is not a throughout the tape game. This is, I'm going to show the tape in front of the entire team game.
Yikes.
You know, there's times where you just don't play well. The effort is there. The mentality was right, but maybe you got out coached or there was some lucky plays that happened and you like, I want to get rid of that. This game was a game that came down to brute force and physicality at time, and also mental errors, right? So as a coach, you want to go back to the film and look at this as a team. And this is where Nick Sirianni, I hope, because he's known as a player's coach, this is a Bill Parcells, Bill Belichick type of game where you have to get on the board and literally call guys out and let them know this is not Eagle standard. There's a line of demarcation and you're way below that line, sir. And so if they did that and had that type of mindset and shock value, I believe they'll be ready to play against Cowboys. Now, I know with all the fans alone, they should be ready to play for the Cowboys. Yeah. All of the talking heads alone, they should be ready to play against Cowboys. But if Nick Sirianni and the coaching staff were embarrassed about the type of product that they put out there and the type of physical toughness that they showed, I think they should be ready to play.
Well, what do we know about Nick Sirianni's favorite adage is the standard is the standard. He talks about that all the time. And obviously last Sunday was not the Eagles' standard. Adam, let's take a look into the future if we can. The Cowboys have a tougher schedule after the game today. They have a lot of good teams left, but would an Eagles loss today greatly jeopardize, in your mind, their chance to win the NFC East? Remember, no team has repeated as division champion of the NFC East in 19 years.
Yeah, since 2004, when the Eagles were in the midst of winning 3 divisional championships in a row. So if you really look at it, guys, look at Dallas' schedule they've played so far. They've played 2 quality opponents. They lost to both of them. They got absolutely smoked at San Francisco and actually technically Santa Clara by 32. And I know it was week 5, but they were off on that game. This one, Dak wasn't playing well. Now he's playing obviously great football, which we'll talk about today. And a game they blew at Philly where they clearly should have won the game. And I'm sure that's on their minds. But the thing, I want to get back to what Jason was talking about. Hearing the players talk after the last game, it was interesting. A couple of them said, hey, we had this coming because we kept winning close games. Remember, they came back 2 games in a row. They were down 17-7 at halftime. They went up, come back to win. So you look at that, then they get blown out. It's kind of a reset here. But yet, through all of their problems, when we're going to get into their defense, which has struggled, Hurts' inconsistency, we all know about that, they still have the best record in the National Football League as we speak here. So it's all out there for it. Jeff, you asked the question. It's all out there for them. And Dallas, they've been a front-running team. They've got a very good roster. Something always seems to happen to them. You look at the last time the Eagles played them. But look, they're at home. They haven't lost since week 1 of last season at home. So, and you talked about their 14th straight. And that was to Tampa Bay, by the way. But you really look at it. Look at last year when they played the Eagles there. Gardner Minshew was the quarterback. The Eagles put up a ton of points.
Mm-hmm. All right. So we're like, good stuff. We're going to break this down. And again, the Cowboys have a much tougher schedule over the last part of their season than the Eagles do. We might look back on that whole Cardinals 3-game stretch as being critical for them getting the number 1 seed, depending on what happens today. Let's get into the injuries because these are 2 fairly healthy teams. The Eagles got good news this week. By the way, our injury report sponsored by Garage Beer. It's light beer like it used to be. Find yours at drinkgaragebeer.com. Maybe I had a few too many garage beers before the show. Either way, the good news is linebacker Zach Cunningham, whose presence was missed last Sunday, is expected to be in the lineup this evening. What does that mean for newcomer Shaq Leonard and the whole linebacker rotation? If there is one, remains to be seen. There probably won't be, and we'll get into why there might not be a linebacker rotation in a second. Also, tight end Dallas Goedert, who had broken his forearm in week 9 against Dallas, also expects to make his return tonight against Dallas. He wound up missing just 3 games, Adam. So that was a pretty good, you remember how down fans and people were about Dallas Goedert breaking his forearm and how long it might be. Yeah, wound up making it back in pretty good time.
In fact, he was ready to go last week, but because it was a fracture and he had surgery, he had to wait at least 4 weeks. So he got cleared. He's going to play tonight and play a lot. Zach Cunningham has been cleared. He'll play a lot tonight. Because it was a hamstring injury. I hope he doesn't have any kind of a setback because, Geoff, they're very light. They're still kind of light at that off-the-ball linebacker position. It's crazy. 3 out of the 4 off-the-ball linebackers who are on the roster were not with the team on the active roster in week 1. That tells you the revolving door that they've had at that position. So we're going to learn a lot tonight. This has been a lot of shuffling. I'm fascinated to see what they're going to do in the secondary, how they're going to match up if they do. We know the Eagles are a heavier zone team than the Cowboys are, but what do they do to slow down if they can? CeeDee Lamb, who had 191 against them, so a lot to decipher this evening.
Yeah, definitely. Jay, have you ever played with coming back from a broken forearm? I'm just curious on what you might expect from Dallas Goedert today.
No, I've never had a broken forearm. I played with broken fingers and broken hand. Mm-hmm. But I'm not sure how effective he could be. When you really think about blocking, you think about shocking people. Your hands are paramount, especially for a tight end in his situation. So I'm sure that if he plays tonight, he's going to be limited in his blocking capacity and what they actually allow him to do. So he's probably going to be in the game for pass purposes only. Because I can't see them being okay with him delivering force with his hands. All
right. Well, we will see about that. That's really interesting and to keep an eye on. Excuse us. In defense, of course, we know that the Eagles are again with Cunningham back healthier. Avonte Maddox remains out with the pectoral surgery that he had. Nakobe Dean, this will be his final game, at least for IR purposes. Now we'll see next week if he's able to be put into the 21-day practice window. I know, Adam, you've thought maybe we'll see how it goes, how quickly he can get back.
No, he's not coming. Jeff, hang on. I didn't say he's coming back.
Go for it.
No, I don't expect to see him, if at all, into the playoffs. I've not heard anything about him going into any kind of practice. I'd be really surprised, and also be pleasantly so if he could return for the season. Yeah, I don't. I've not said anything like that. Yeah.
So let's remind people of protocol then. If his 4 games is up on injured reserve after today.
Yeah, but he has a major injury. He's actually
reserve, right.
Yeah. The way. All right. So let me explain how it is. Mm-hmm. When you turn the transaction in, yes, you go on injured reserve, but it's short-term IR or long-term IR. He's on long-term now. That's a major injury. The thought is it's going to be at least 6 weeks. Mm-hmm. Could be 8 weeks. It could be 10. We're not sure, but I'm not expecting to see him anytime soon. So if all of the guys who've been hurt now, the question would be, let's get to Avonte Maddox. Mm-hmm. Avonte Maddox has, as we know, a pretty significant injury. He's missed most of the season. We know how they've had that revolving door at the slot position. There is some hope with the pectoral surgery that he could come back for the playoffs at some point. That guy I could see returning, number 29 Maddox. But as far as Nakobe Dean, it's indefinite. And they have who they have, and that's what they're doing. And by the way, they didn't work anyone out this week at any of the positions.
Yeah. Curious week for the Eagles. And finally, we'll finish it off with Justin Evans, who did not make it back after being on the 21-day practice window, having that expire. So he is done for the year. The team acknowledged that. So let's talk then about what we mentioned at linebacker. It might have been a rotation had some circumstances gone in their favor, but to make room for Shaq Leonard, they waived Christian Ellis, who started last week, and Christian Ellis wound up getting claimed by the New England Patriots. I have a feeling that if you interviewed Howie Roseman, shot him up with True Serum, he would have told you the plan was to bring him back on the practice squad and potentially even have him elevated, because he had plenty of elevations and play today. Now you look at the Eagles linebacker situation. You don't have Christian Ellis. He's not even on your team. You don't have Nakobe Dean. You have Zach Cunningham, who's just coming back from a hamstring injury. Shaq Leonard, who just arrived here a few days ago after not playing for a couple of weeks. And you got Ben Van Sumeren, who is only played on special teams, a undrafted rookie. Those are your three. Am I missing anybody here? I think these are the only three
Nick Morrow
linebackers, right?
No, Nick Morrow.
No, I'm sorry, Nick Morrow. I forgot Nick Morrow. Right. So the question is, with Nick Morrow and Zach Cunningham, we've seen Sean Desai, Greg, we've seen Sean Desai rotate players at positions. You kind of wonder today, what can Shaq Leonard do, if anything, or is this going to have to be Nick Morrow and Zach Cunningham all the way through, with Cunningham coming back from a hamstring?
Yeah, we don't know the answer to that. Leonard just got here. Leonard had not played a ton of football recently in Indianapolis. He'd essentially been beaten out by EJ Speed. So, and it's a little different defensive approach than he predominantly played in his career in Indianapolis, where it was a lot of dropping to landmarks. It's a little different here with more pattern reading, and so it's just a different approach. Now he's a veteran and a very smart player. There was a 3 or 4 year stretch where he was clearly a top 3 all-around linebacker in the league. I know that Indy lost today, but Indy's in the playoff hunt. You'd have to believe if they felt that he was a top linebacker for them, he'd still be there. So we don't know about Shaq Leonard. Now, the fact that he's a veteran and has been a really good player in the league will certainly help. He's not an unknown, and mentally he was always a really, really good player. But Cunningham's coming back from a hamstring, just missing 1 week. Now, I don't know the severity of the injury, okay? But normally hamstrings do take a little time. Jay could probably speak to this way better than I can. But normally hamstrings, that it must have been pretty minor in their mind if he's been cleared to play, or we could see him tweak it and be out of the game after 5 snaps.
Yeah, it's tricky, and it was very dangerous, like you and Adam definitely mentioned. So if based on the linebackers that they have available and the safety that they have available, Zach Cunningham is more likely to be on special teams. And where you tweak your hamstring is running down on a kickoff. It's running down on punt return, and you jostling with the guy trying to keep him in position, right? So your mind is off of the hamstring trying to protect it because you're just trying to get your job done. So it's a very dangerous position that they put themselves in. And yes, it is very likely out of any other injury that you can have to re-aggravate is a hamstring.
Yeah. And by the way, Adam, not only is this a risky proposition for the Eagles defense, but Christian Ellis was a strong performer on a special teams unit that had really righted its wrongs from last year. And the Eagles didn't elevate anybody, I believe, from their practice squad to even help in that category. So you kind of wonder on what kind of impact this is going to have on 2 out of the 3 phases of the game, no?
I was really surprised they did that. Yeah, in fact, this is the second straight week that they didn't elevate anyone. And I know their injury situation is getting better, but Christian Ellis is a guy that is one of the best special teams players. He's got size, he's got length and speed. For that, that's what he offered them. And look, there's a saying in personnel, if you're willing to cut a player and put him through waivers, you're willing to lose him. And they lost him. And by the way, a lot of teams put in claims for him. Think about that. I'm sure most saw him as a special teams player. Now Van Sumeren's role obviously is going to be more important in that area. That's a shame. This is a guy that they developed, and now he's with the Patriots. And the Patriots, by the way, they couldn't use him. They claimed him Wednesday, but because they had a game Thursday, they had to delay it a week. So he got there. He was officially claimed on Friday. But as you mentioned, Christian Ellis no longer an Eagle.
Yeah, it's bizarre because you still got running backs that you don't need. So there's
one in particular that you're referring to, Jason. Yes.
you don't need Penny. I don't know.
Hey, listen, there's got to be, as we always like to say, there has to be some kind of method to the madness. I just don't know what the method is, but it certainly feels like madness. So let's talk and shift gears to Cowboys injuries. Nobody go to the bathroom. All right. The Cowboys are fully healthy. Everything's good. They've had a couple of good players on IR. Demarion Overshawn, the rookie, Leighton Vander Esch, the linebacker, and of course, Trayvon Diggs, their corner. Those guys aren't going to play. They've been on IR. Everybody else, good to go. Is there even, I believe the running back, Rico Dowdle, Adam, has just been nursing a little bit of an ankle injury for a few weeks, but that's about it, right?
Yeah, he's good to go. He's the backup running back. He's had a lot of injuries in his career going back to college. Yeah, unfortunately, the three guys on IR will not return this season. Van Der Esch has had major issues with his neck. Overshown, who you talked about, it towards the ACL in training camp.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, look, they're also, though, that their offensive line had some injury issues, back and forth, but now they're clean. And man, Dak, what part of the reason why Dak is playing well, guys, getting protected.
Absolutely. All right, let's get into this matchup. This Eagles versus Cowboys, always an exciting game, always filled with great matchups. And we're going to talk about that right this second. We'll start with the Eagles offense, and a big question lately over the last few weeks, even after some wins, guys, is what's up with Jalen Hurts? The offense just doesn't look the same. If you look at his numbers over the past 4 weeks, they are not what we're used to seeing from him since the start of last year. I'm not insinuating that all of the offensive inconsistency is on him, but the reality is that he ranks near the bottom of many quarterback rankings since the start of week 10. We're talking about 21st in passer rating, 25th in completion percentage, which is sort of shocking for him. 6.6 yards per attempt. That's 22nd. This is a guy who was rivaling Tua Tagovailoa last year for number one in yards per attempt. So numbers are down, and clearly there are some questions here about what's going on. So Greg, I would like you to just outline some things lately that you've seen on tape from Jalen Hurts to help describe why the numbers might be down.
Well, Nick Bosa said the quiet part out loud this week.
He did.
I've been telling you for weeks. He basically said that he drops his eyes, and they knew that if they could get people anywhere near him, he would drop his eyes. And that's one reason why he's left so many throws on the field. You can pull up the tape in any game, and you'll see receivers open within the design of the play and the play structure. And that's where the read is. And he just doesn't pull the trigger. And see, when you watch a game on TV, the assumption for most people is that when a quarterback is in the pocket for 3 or 4 seconds, that automatically means the receivers are covered. I learned very early on watching tape going back. We got the coaching tape in 1992, so I've been watching tape for 32 years, okay? And you learn very early on watching tape and sitting with the people I've had the opportunity to sit with through the years that nothing could be further from the truth. That's what fans see. They see a quarterback in the pocket, they automatically assume no one's open. Rarely is that the case. And right now, Jalen is not seeing it. He's just not seeing it. Whether he's dropping his eyes on every play, that you can't speak to. But obviously, Nick Bosa and the staff in San Francisco, Nick Bosa is repeating what he was told by coaches and from his film study. The coaches are watching a heck of a lot more tape than Nick Bosa is, taking nothing away from Nick Bosa, but that's what coaches do. And so that's what he was presented with. And that's what the entire D line was presented with in their meetings and film study leading up to this game. And it's very, very evident on tape. And it has been that way for quite a while. I mean, it started with, the first play last week when Stoll was wide open on a sail route because they got exactly what they wanted. They ran play action. They got the rookie safety, Jair Brown, to fly up, and Stoll ran right by him. And Jalen looked right at him. And to Nick Sirianni's credit, he didn't want to throw his quarterback under the bus, so he gave, the BS response about, well, that wasn't the read, but it was the read. And, so that's been a problem. And that's why one of the reasons the pass game has been inconsistent.
Greg, one quick follow-up here. We talked to John T. Filippo about, the tape, and what John said, and it's everything you said. And then he said, the other thing is, Jalen's moving when he shouldn't be moving.
Prematurely, way too prematurely.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, which is another byproduct of just not seeing it the way you're supposed to. Because when you drop back and you're not seeing it right away, because don't forget, you don't have a lot of time. So if you drop back and on your second or third step, you're seeing more of a blur than a true, definition of what it is you're supposed to seeing, you're going to move. Especially when he's been able to move probably since he first picked up a football and played quarterback when he was 9 years old. He's always been able to do that. So he's going to move. I'm sure Jay probably can respond to a lot of this as well.
Yeah. Well, here's the baffling part is because he's shown, and this is where, I get kind of frustrated with commentators like David Carr when he says, "Hey, you just put Brent Rhoda in there." That's asinine, right? It's ridiculous.
Thank you.
It's a terrible
100%.
Yeah.
Right. So because Jalen has shown that he has progressed and has seen the field, especially last year. Now, I don't know if Greg, if you remember this, but not last year, not the 2022 season, but the 2021 season. The big knock on Jalen Hurts was he couldn't throw the ball in the middle of the field. And what does that say? You can't see it. You and I know that, right? When you don't throw the ball in the middle of the field, you can't see it. 2022, he threw the ball everywhere and was efficient at doing it and was able to stay in there and see a lot of things. For some reason this year, there seems like there is a disconnect. And we talked about it the Patriots game. And then we talked about it again, the Jets game. And then we talked about it again at this game or that game. And so there's a large inconsistency there. I don't know if it's a Shane Steichen thing. I don't necessarily know, what it may be. But I did have I was confused, and I said, you know what, let me call the guy. I called Trey. I said, or talk to Trey, and I asked him. I was like, hey, why is Jalen bringing his eyes down? Because they had this conversation, and he was like, dude, it's the way that we're rushing as well, the way that our tackles are setting. He's like, Jalen should get the ball out. He's like, but the pocket's supposed to be a U. He's like, now our tackles give up so much ground that he doesn't feel protected, and it is more like a V. It's caving in from the inside. So if you notice that a lot of the pass rushes that we give up are from inside rushes, a lot of the pressures that we give up. So he was saying those types of things. But again, at the end of the day, Jalen has to get the ball out. The 8-second sack that he took, maybe the first third down of the game when Devontae Smith was wide open, it was a two-man route. It was a middle seam and a comeback. That ball got to be thrown there. There's no other read. Why are you looking left? I didn't understand. The bad play design, too, because you have to have some type of outlet. It's a 4-man rush. But other than that, like, Jalen is missing some things. But I think there's a lot of response. There's not much creativity. That's the one thing you can get out of this game, is that you saw a master of creativity. And you guys know how I feel about Kyle Shanahan. It's been said multiple times, many times for me on the show. And you look at Brian Johnson's offense, it's a little stagnant. So there's a bunch of different reasons why Jalen isn't playing well. And when a guy isn't seeing the field, I believe it's your job as a coach to give him some easy things.
Great segue, because I want to ask you.
I would say that at times they have. I mean, for instance, the first possession, they were just outside the red zone. It was 1st and 10. And they just ran a simple 2-man route concept, which, Jay, you know this, everybody runs this, where it went in a 2-by-2, number 1 runs vertically and number 2 breaks out. Okay. Yeah. Normally the coverage is, if it's not man, you're going to get, and if it's not trap, which it wasn't, you're going to get the quick out. Well, Smith was wide open on the outcut from the boundary slot. It was easy. I mean, that's 9th grade stuff. Hurts had no pressure, but he immediately came off Smith and ran out of the pocket to his right, and he threw an incompletion. And again, they ended up with a field goal on that drive, obviously, not a touchdown. And that should have been pitch and catch. So, there are examples like that as well, where it's basic stuff, and for whatever reason, he's just not throwing it. None of us could probably say why. He'd have to tell you, but he's just not throwing it.
Yeah. But he has done it.
He's done it. That's the thing.
Yeah. That's the thing that I don't want people to get to like, hey, well, Jason just can't read defenses. No, he's shown that he's done it.
Right.
Why hasn't he continued to progress this year in that area? We don't know.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you, Jay, because I heard you made that point, a couple of minutes ago. And listen, every quarterback I've ever watched, almost all of them have those periods where they're going through a little bit of a rut, right? Even now, today in the NFL, there are some really good quarterbacks who are not playing very well. Justin Herbert's not playing very well. So let me ask you, when a guy has a track record of doing it, and he can do it, he can see it, from a coaching standpoint, you've been around enough good coaches, what can the Eagles do today just to help him see it better? What can they do from an offensive standpoint, from a schematic? There's got to be a way or a plan at least, that they can formulate. It may not work, but at least say this gives us a better shot to get him back into the flow.
The only thing I can say that you do is you keep doing the same thing, but maybe you give Shane a call. You say, hey, Shane, you know what are we doing wrong? What are we doing wrong in this situation? We have this problem or this, whatever. And say, hey, this is what I did, in order to make it easier for him or whatever it is. I think you have conversations among coaches to try to come up with the best strategy for Jalen. Sit Jalen down and say, hey, is there something we can help you with? But remember, I told you the guys this at the beginning of the season. This is a different year for Jalen Hurts. This is a newfound everything for him. He's able to buy moms a house. He's able to get cousins. There's a new celebrity, face of the franchise, commercials, all this thing. I see Jalen Hurts' face on television a lot now. I didn't see that a couple of years ago. So I believe all of these things play a part in the acts that he gets from the media now. All those things play a part. So I don't necessarily know what the remedy would do, but me as a coach, if I know that a coach had success that I didn't have prior to, because Nick Sirianni was here that year before that, hey, what did you do in order to get the best out of him in this area? And I believe I would make that call, because I definitely think that Shane Steichen was positive for Jalen Hurts.
Is that common guys? Shane Steichen's trying to win games right now every weekend, but do coaches kind of talk amongst each other during the week?
When you have a relationship with a guy, the head coach, even though he has a lot of responsibility, that, hey, at this particular time, you shoot a guy a text, hey, coach, I need 5 minutes, 10 minutes. They'll make sure that those guys have been around a long time, and they're going to need you.
Right. Adam,
they're going to need some information from you.
That's a little intel here, a little intel there. Hey, we know the players do it, so of course coaches can do it too. We had a really interesting conversation, Adam, with former Eagles quarterbacks coach John DeFilippo, and give the quote about at the top of his drop, where he said,
"Get a little hoppy, at the top of his drop."
Yeah. Which almost says that he doesn't really trust that, maybe to your point, Greg or Jason, about that pocket sort of collapsing a little more. I don't think it's been a bad. I just think that he's used to a little bit more comfort in the pocket, is what DeFilippo, I believe, was trying to say.
Right. And remember last year, not to take anything away from Jalen, he was awesome. I mean, had he not gotten hurt late, he would have been the MVP based on the kind of way things were going. He was incredible. But here, things aren't quite as good. He has not been quite as clean, and he's sort of reacted prematurely to the pressure. And what John also told us that, when your quarterback is not quite where you want him to be, when you go to those openers, those first couple series, give him the easy throws that you put in to get him accurate and get him comfortable. John was pretty insistent on that. That's how he's always coached it. I think that's when we've talked to coaches, Geoff, over the years. That's the way you look at it. Get out of his hands quickly, get feeling comfortable with himself. Then you expand. If he's doing well, then you expand it a little bit, because overall it's been very inconsistent. Now, what's funny is the first two series last week were good. They moved the ball down and they took field goals. After that was much worse.
Right. Well, I tell you, it's very valuable for us to be in this platform to be able to have a Super Bowl champion quarterbacks coach, John DeFilippo, giving us the coach's perspective. He's also been an NFL offensive coordinator many times. So one of the great reasons to be one of our Patreon members, that's patreon.com/insidethebirds. Every week we speak with Coach Flip. All right. Well, maybe one help for the Eagles today, at least their offense, could be going up against a Dallas defense that looks very good on paper, but looks can be deceiving. Adam, as you mentioned on the Inside the Birds podcast this week, the Cowboys look different when they face winning teams as opposed to others. In their games against the Niners, Eagles, Seahawks, and Rams, which are the only teams they played who are 500 or better going into the weekend, Cowboys haven't allowed an average of 31 points per game. Against everyone else, we're talking Jets, Giants, Cardinals, Patriots, Chargers, Panthers, and Commanders, 10 points per game. That is about as Jekyll and Hyde as it can get in this league against good and bad teams.
Look, the Dallas defense is well coached by Dan Quinn, runs a good scheme, a lot of man coverage. We'll talk about that. The thing that was, look, you mentioned the schedule. We could say all we want about how good Dallas is at home, but look what Geno Smith did. He had a great game, one of his best games as a Seahawk last week. Metcalf absolutely abused their secondary. Well, I'm sure we're going to talk about that. So, yeah, this is a matchup, and we talk about the Eagles bouncing back as we did on our show on Friday. This is a game that should be high scoring. There's going to be opportunities, and when we talk to DeFilippo, he loves coaching games where there's man coverage. Loves it, because there's so much you can do against man coverage, whereas against zone that you're kind of restricted in a way. No, Jason, you've told us, you as a receiver, correct me if I'm wrong, don't you love going against man coverage?
Yeah, man coverage is great for a guy that can get open. If you struggle to uncover, then it's a rougher game for you. Most of
Gotcha.
these guys nowadays, most guys don't get open versus man that well just because of the nature of the game. But if you have a great schemer as a play caller, this can be easy money because it's shooting fish in the barrel at that point. Because your goal is to get matchup problems, right? So I can hit a back on a swing from the opposite side of the field. So I line him up strong, and then off the snap of the ball, he goes weak. And now I got 3 or 4 draggers or 2 or 3 draggers going across the field. Now his guy has to go through all of these bodies, right? So there's multiple ways to get easy throws in man-to-man. And if you're a great schemer, it's a dream.
So I wanted to ask both you and Greg about this, Jason, just in general, Eagles wide receivers against the Niners. I watched tape. I thought the Niners did a pretty good job in coverage, even when Jalen had some time to throw. Greg, did you see did it stick out to you that Eagles receivers weren't either separating well or fighting to get separation? What was your view on that?
I mean, I didn't see that as a huge problem throughout the game, where it was, oh my God, there was nowhere to throw the football. I mean, I thought that Ward played well at times. I mean, clearly they matched him on Brown when Brown lined up outside, and I thought he did a good job on certain snaps. There were other times Brown beat him. But no, to me, and Jay can speak to this, I didn't see it as, man, they just shut them down and there was nowhere to go with the football. I didn't see it that way at all.
Okay. What did you see?
I just thought that they were it wasn't always man. I just thought that they were more aggressive toward the receivers. And the reason being because they rushed for most of the game. They had 7 defenders back, right? So those underneath players can be a little bit more aggressive because they had safety help over the top. So that's that. It wasn't a game where they just got locked down or anything like that. When your quarterback's not seeing the field well and the ball's not coming out, and then for some reason, it just seemed like it wasn't a lot of available opportunities of actual route concepts being run. It was either shot plays, not necessarily shot plays, but like always like the foo-foo, read, how can I say this? Like RPO action, something like something off of an in cut or 5-yard out. It wasn't like true offense, right? So it's kind of hard to say the guys weren't getting open. AJ Brown ran slants pretty well. Devontae Smith, every time he had a chance to be open, I thought that he was. So, yeah. I didn't view the receivers. I didn't view the receivers as a problem. I thought that they played a winning football game, and that's how we got graded back in the day.
Gotcha. The Eagles had 28 points through 3 quarters in this last game against Dallas, and they kind of got shut down a little bit in the fourth quarter of the game. Dallas controlled the ball a lot in the fourth quarter. That was a big part of it. But 28 points through 3 quarters, do you see some real advantageous match? Do you feel like the style of defense that Dallas plays will give Jalen Hurts a chance to get back on track and find AJ and Devontae and Dallas Goedert coming back? If he can at least catch the ball well, does that help this offense out in finding its identity again?
Well, you know that you have a winner, and nothing helps a quarterback out if you don't have to think about a guy getting open or be perfect when it comes to throwing a guy open, right? So Dallas Goedert is a guy that can win a battle, and AJ and Devontae can as well. And I've always said this: Duran is a great corner when it comes to reading a quarterback and being opportunistic, but he can struggle at times in man-to-man. The first game he got beat a lot, so I think that if you're a guy that's throwing the ball on time with him and you're not putting it in harm's way, you can beat him. I don't think that they have a guy that's unbeatable in their secondary. It's not. I think the best 2 corners they faced probably the last 2 weeks.
Greg, what was the number you guys gave out in the matchup show? I think you might have done it. That Bland has been given up lately. It's unbelievable.
I did a study on Bland this week because he's had all the interceptions, and Jay hit it right on the head. He gets his interceptions almost exclusively playing a certain way, playing off coverage, and he sits and he squats and he jumps routes. He plays their pass rush really, really well. But when that doesn't happen, he gets beat a lot. And the last 2 weeks, and it was Metcalf, and actually it was against the Commanders. The last 2 weeks, think about these numbers. He's been targeted 23 times. He's given up 19 receptions for 279 yards and 2 touchdowns. Okay.
In 2 games? 2 games. Wow.
He
feels like he should be playing linebacker for the Eagles with those kind of stats.
He gets beat a lot. Like I said, he's really good at what he's good at. And if you go back and look at all his interceptions, for the most part, that's what they are. He sits, he squats. I mean, if you look back when they played Seattle, which was their last game, seems like that was 3 months ago, but their last game, when Metcalf had the 70-plus yard touchdown on him, he tried the same thing in off coverage. He just sat there, and Metcalf crossed his face on what was basically a skinny post type route, and he couldn't respond. He got stuck, and Metcalf caught it and then ran for the touchdown. But that's what he is. But he's I noticed this a number of weeks ago watching them, because he's had all these picks. So I made it a point to really look at him carefully. And I'm saying, God, this guy gets beat a lot. Even when the ball's not thrown, he's getting beat.
He's getting beat.
And I'm thinking to myself, well, this guy's not really that good a man-to-man corner, even though the numbers say otherwise, because he's had a lot of interceptions. It just reminded me of a story totally unrelated to corner play. But when I interviewed Osi Umenyiora years ago, for a piece I did, a show I used to do called Greatest Games, and he had 3 sacks in one game against Walter Jones, the Hall of Fame left tackle. And we were just kind of shooting the breeze. And he said to me, everybody said I had a great game. He said, I beat him 3 times. The other 65 plays, he kicked my ass. But I beat him 3 times and I ended up getting sacks. But the other 65 plays, he just killed me. That Bland is sort of like that. He makes plays and you can't take that away from him. He's really good at that, but he gets beat a lot.
Yeah, exactly. He capitalized on his opportunity, ball behind, and Geno just threw a couple of dimes there. That throw on that post, that was covered for it. The ball shouldn't have been thrown. But he was able to move the safety with his eyes a little bit and fit it in there in the perfect spot, and it's a touchdown.
Who will match up for the Eagles today mostly against DaRon Bland if things stay the same and nobody tinkers crazy?
Well, normally they play sides. So normally Bland is the right corner and Gilmore is the left corner. But, it's funny because in that Seattle game, once you got into the third quarter, because Bland was just getting toasted, they actually, it's not that they switch sides, but they no longer put Bland on Metcalf. So wherever Metcalf went, Gilmore went with him. But normally all year long, they have played sides.
Right. Which, coaches prefer not to have to make that adjustment. It's usually forced on them. You wonder, though, with Bland, where he lines up ordinarily, then that would normally be Devontae Smith's side of the football, correct? If Devontae Smith is going to line up and it's, say, a 2x2 as the number 1 to the right side.
Well, that's based on offense. It's not necessarily a normal offense. It all depends on where the ball is spotted, what side of the field they're on, what hash they're on. Yeah, right. So it's not necessary. So I wouldn't say he's going to be on the right side or left side. I just think where the ball is spotted in the situation.
Gotcha. And you know how this works, fellas. A guy has numbers the way DaRon Bland is. He's probably going to be in the Pro Bowl game, and people are going to look at that and say, "Oh, what a great year DaRon Bland had." But as you're mentioning, definitely some opportunities for the Eagles to strike there. How about Gilmore, Greg? On how's Stephon Gilmore's tape been? Because we thought he was one of the more, perfect fit type of acquisitions for the Cowboys in the offseason.
Yeah, I mean, I think Gilmore's a solid player. I mean, he's more physical than Bland. I just think he's a more competitive, tougher player. He's a good player. But as Adam said, they play a ton of man coverage. And we'll see, that's sort of been their MO. Now they'll mix and match here and there depending on situations, but basically what you're going to get, throughout the game is a good amount of man coverage.
All right, good stuff.
And actually, Gilmore, I think I said it wrong. Gilmore's the left corner. I think I said that, and Bland's the right corner. I think I did.
Yeah, that's what you did say. Bland is the right corner. Yeah. All right, good stuff there. We're going to talk more about the Birds offense in 1 second. First, we want to talk about our friends at Hello Fresh. I mean, wintertime's almost here. It's getting dark so soon. Everyone's getting their holiday shopping done. Who's got time to plan and make meals? Not us. That's why we love Hello Fresh. They deliver farm fresh food with pre-proportioned ingredients and seasonal recipes right to our doorstep. There's no wasting time at grocery stores because America's #1 meal kit helps make home cooking easy, efficient, and affordable. With HelloFresh, the shopping's already done. The perfect amount ingredients arrive with step-by-step recipe cards. It doesn't get more efficient than that, everyone. Plus, HelloFresh saves you time and money. It's 25% less expensive than takeout, so you get a home-cooked meal without digging deep into your wallet. Don't forget about taste and selection. They got chicken, they got steak, they got seafood, they have vegetarian meals, shrimp and risotto, anything you can think of, they've got it. So go to HelloFresh.com/50Eagles and use the promo code 50Eagles, 50 Eagles for 50% off plus free shipping. That's HelloFresh.com/50Eagles and use that code 50Eagles, all one word, 50Eagles for 50% off plus free shipping. Act now for America's #1 meal kit. All right, we're talking about the Eagles offense, what they need to do to have success today against this Dallas defense, and obviously blocking it up for Jalen Hurts against a Dallas defense that has the 7th most sacks in the NFL will be important. They're also going to have to block it up when the Eagles decide that they want to run. Criticism has come down on Eagles coach Nick Sirianni and the offensive staff for not running the ball against the Niners, although I would say some criticism is just that they didn't run the ball well when they did run the ball. Greg, was the issue you saw that it wasn't just lack of runs, but more productivity when they decided to run?
Yeah, I think the run game is always kind of an interesting dynamic because the run game is most teams when that run well throughout the course of a game usually stay with the run. Because the run is rarely are you just getting 40-yard runs. So the run game normally is more of a volume thing than a one-play thing or a two-play thing. Obviously the Eagles through the first 2 possessions kicked field goals, had nice drives, and then the game snowballed on them, and then you start to feel, and again, I'm not in the head of either Nick Sirianni or Brian Johnson or anybody upstairs charting anything, but that game started to have a snowball feel to it, where it just seemed like everything was going downhill fast, and you just start to feel like you can't run the ball. And when I say can't run, I don't mean not gain yards, but you can't call running plays. So I don't know if that game's the best example, but the run game is normally something that you have to have some commitment to and try to stay with it. But the flip side of that too is you can run the ball and stay with it a lot more too when your defense is playing well. And that has not been the case in recent weeks. Even
Right.
beating Buffalo put up 30 plus. When the defense is not playing well and you feel like you've got to keep putting up points, it's just a mentality. You don't think about running the ball with commitment in those kinds of situations.
Yeah, and for anyone who's watching right now, and certainly this is a fair comment, but we'll expand on this, but saying, man, this is sort of an overly negative. The quarterback's not playing well, the running game's not doing well. This team only lost 1 game. They just happened to lose it in bad fashion. There are some trends we're seeing that go even beyond the 1 week where even they were winning games. And to your point on this going back a little bit, Greg, we just talked about Jalen Hurts' stats from week 10 to week 14. Well, if you look at the Eagles rushing from week 10 to week 14, they are 26th in rushing yards, 28th in attempts, 14th in yards per carry. And if you look at their RPO game, that's way down as well. Total yards is 21st. So we're talking about the bread and butter usually of what the Eagles were doing either last year or at the beginning of this year, all starting to come back. And Jason, I've heard some people say, and I'll see if you agree with this, because of that, the Eagles, they won some games against Kansas City and Buffalo, but it didn't look pretty. It almost felt like a walking into a buzzsaw deal going against such a good 49ers team that got healthy and was playing playing as well as they were. Do you feel like the Eagles over the last few weeks have just sort of skated here and then it finally caught up to them?
I just think that here's and I said this a few times, the Kansas City Chiefs game, the Buffalo game, it's very, very hard to get a beat on how well their offense is doing and not because of the conditions. I just think that it's a very tough thing to evaluate an offense in those types of conditions and what they're doing and what they're trying to do. Mm-hmm. Now, they're able to get those games under control and end up winning the games. I just think that this entire season, maybe the Eagles have overachieved in some areas. Not trying to hate on anybody.
No, that's
fair.
I
just think that they've overachieved in some areas, knowing that, man, just think about it. This team has been 28th to 32nd in the league when it comes to passing, getting off the field on third downs. When do you see a team that's finishing, that's number one in the league, that has like the worst passing defense? It just doesn't happen.
Right.
Getting off the field. So I just think that the team has, in a way, overachieved most of the season. At some point, it has to come back down. And we all, and I think all of us were somewhere in the area of the Eagles, losing 4 to 6 games, somewhere in there. I think all of us were in that area. And I just think that we held out hope and saying, oh, this team could be a 2-loss team for the entire year, or 3-loss team the entire year. And it's kind of shaken out that we're probably in that 4 to 6 range when it comes to losses. And it has something to do with our defense. And and Greg is correct when he's talking about running the ball. The team scored 6 straight touchdown drives.
Right.
Yeah.
How about, though, the idea of running it?
Can I just say one thing, Jeff?
Go ahead, Greg.
In response to what you said, I don't want what we're doing, and I hope fans appreciate this, is we're talking the way coaches are talking. When a team wins, no matter what the Eagles' record is, so let's say they win, the coaches don't come in on Monday and say, hey, guys, you know what? We won. You got the week off. We've got nothing to coach. It doesn't work like that. There's always things to coach. Okay. You know how it is. A team could win 40-10. And I guarantee, and Jay knows this, he's been involved in all this, obviously far more than I have, but I've been doing this a long time and I know a lot of coaches and had a lot of conversations. They don't come in on Monday and say, guys, great game. We'll see you Saturday for the walkthrough. There's coaching that gets done team-wise, individual-wise. Let's work on specific things. We're going to get better at this, So, we're not trying to say, we're not being negative. We're being coaches in a sense.
Correct.
This is what's happening in the building. Okay. Yes. So objective. People need to understand, you know how it is with social media now. You get the usual stuff that people say to you if you don't, rave about a guy constantly, but that's not what coaches do. Just when you win a game, the coaches don't come in and sing Kumbaya. That's not the way it works.
Yeah, no, they say things like this. Hey, we were lucky today, but this will not fly in the future.
Yeah.
Like, this is 9 out of 10 times this was wrong. Hey, you made this read and this throw in this situation and it panned out, but don't do it again tomorrow because it's going to get picked.
Right. That's
how that goes.
Yeah, exactly.
So to finish, I agree that the volume of runs against San Francisco, especially, you don't count as much. Not count, but they can be understood because they fell into a hole pretty quickly there. But my concern, or what I'm really looking at, is their average yard per rushing attempt being fairly mediocre for them, 14th in the league for the last 4 or 5 weeks. And we know that Jalen Hurts is not the factor as a designed runner as he used to be. But I have a hard time, and Jay and Greg and even Adam, all that, but they have a very good offensive line and they have a really good running back in DeAndre Swift and some other guys. I feel like they should be able to run the ball even without Jalen Hurts's contributions to it. Maybe they won't be as prolific, but to be where they're at over the last 4 weeks sort of surprises me, given what they have up front in personnel. Jade, I mean, do you feel like they should be able to run the ball better?
Who's been out the last 4 weeks?
So this is all about right guard and Cam Jurgens? I mean, I can understand some of it.
Jurgens, Goddard is a pretty prolific blocker. He's pretty good at it. And there's no tails.
Mm-hmm.
Right? When you got certain guys in certain situations, there's easy to recognize, okay, Stoll is in on this play and he's to the left side, or, he's in this position, right? When there's the Goddard in there, it's all the same. And that's the thing that you can say about the 49ers offense, is that it looks the same, whether it's a run or pass. Another thing too, I just don't think that we run outside enough. I don't know. Greg, do you notice that? I don't know. I just think that there's no creativity when it comes to getting two reverses and jet sweeps and things like that, that opened up the game plan with the Kansas City Chiefs in the second half.
You know,
like there's not much creativity. It's just like run it up the middle, run it right, but there's no window dressing.
Yeah, you know, to me, you know, just from doing this for a long time and seeing, you know, different run games, and you can run the ball, good or bad, multiple ways. That's the thing. I mean, there are some teams that through the years, they just line up and they have 3 running plays and they're really good at them, and they just run and they're really good. There's other teams that do a lot of things. You know, the Niners may be an extreme example because of their use of their extensive use of motion. So you have to figure out what is the best way for you to run. Last year, Geoff, and your point is 100% valid. Last year, Jalen Hurts was a major dimension, major element in their run game, and it dictated the way teams lined up. You're not seeing that as much this year, both with Jalen as a runner and with the way teams are playing. So now you have to figure out, okay, how are we going to run the ball? So if you feel like we have a really good O-line, can we just line up and say, you know what, let's run some zone stuff. Let's run some gap scheme stuff. We've got a really good O-line. Let's just run it. Okay. I mean, there are a lot of teams that do that. Or do you feel like, hey, we have to add a lot of other elements to our run game, motion, you know, different formations, different personnel packages? My guess is they're having this conversation in the building. You know, we'll see where it goes.
I do recall that Adam and I had that conversation on the pod a couple of weeks ago where we started to notice things changing a little bit, knowing Juergens would be back. And, you know, Adam, we talked about maybe it's time to spice it up, as Greg just mentioned. Maybe you draw up a few pulling, you know, pin pulls, whatever it is, something different that the opponent hasn't yet seen, just so you're keeping them a little bit more honest, because you do have good run personnel, theoretically.
I mean, they brought up a couple.
Just one quick thing before I speak.
Yeah.
I'm by no means an offensive line guru, so take what I'm about to say with a grain of salt. I don't feel like, just watching tape, I don't feel like Landon Dickerson has been quite as good this year as he was last year. Now, again, I could be dead wrong, but it just you know, and again, I'm not charting him on every play, but I just feel like I've seen him get moved a little bit backwards. You know, a little. I don't mean he gets shoved into the backfield 5 yards. Right. But I just don't feel like he's been quite as dominant as he was a year ago.
That left side was pretty dominant last year.
Yeah, it was.
I think we could actually also say that about Mailata at times. Whether
I would agree.
Yeah.
Don't you agree, Jay? It hasn't been quite the same.
Well, in passing and running. So
yeah.
That's you remember, teams get a team, and I told you about this, is that I want you guys to notice it, that these guys get a lot of bull rushes and a lot of rushes to the inside that they give up pressure to. And that could be part of the reason, right? And they're saying, if we can get any shade of color toward Jalen, it throws his game off. So let us rush inside to change the launch point.
I would say, since I think of that Miami game where they were dominant both sides of the football at home, the running game and their offense has steadily gone downhill. I mean, yes, every now and then, the Washington game, they scored a lot of points, but you know, I was talking to someone with the Niners who said it really started with them. They went back to the championship game, and they looked at the type of runs that Hurts was beating them on, and they did. And you guys could attest what the tape looked like in this past game. They wanted to make sure he didn't beat them with his legs.
Yeah,
and that is really, in a nutshell, what's happened this season. Teams are not letting Hurts do that, and that was part of the special part about his game last season. It was his legs, and obviously with his arm. And both are not in sync right now. They're not as devastating, even close to it, whether it's blocking for the run game, protection, as Jason was talking about earlier when he talked, I guess, to Trey Thomas. Whatever the case may be, it just doesn't look as good. They're getting away with it with a good half here, a good half there. But, you know, when they talk, Geoff, about playing a complete game, it's been a while since they've done that.
100%, no doubt. Maybe fortunes will change today against this Dallas defense. Let's pause, because we have to get into the Eagles defense, but let's pause for a moment to hear from our friends at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City, the exclusive Jersey Shore resort of Inside the Birds.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
All right, hour 2 of Inside the Birds pregame live. Geoff Mosher, Adam Caplan, Greg Cosell, and former Eagles wide receiver Jason Avant. Now, after the Eagles were favored in their first 10 games this year, they are now underdogs for the second straight week. Life comes at you fast, they say. According to our friends at MyBookie, that's mybookie.ag, the white-hot Cowboys are 3.5-point favorites tonight with an over-under of, whoa, hang on to your 10-gallon hat here, fellas, over-under of 51.5. So clearly some scoring is expected in this game. I would like to take this moment to say that I am not a fan of AT&T Stadium. I think it's overrated. I don't like roofs. I don't like domes. And, you know, we talk about eye candy with the 49ers offense, all that. I think there's too much eye candy in that place. It's one of my least favorite stadiums in the NFL, and I've been to every single one except the one in Vegas. Jason, what did you think about playing there in AT&T Stadium?
I love playing AT&T Stadium. Besides the big jumbotron in the middle of the field, other than that, it was great. It was great. Like,
well, so it's good surface though, right?
Yeah, good surface. The punters, you can hit the middle, and for the players, you want to see the replay. So when you're jogging back to the huddle, you want to look at the replay, and you can't see the replay because you can't see it from the field as a player. You got to go toward the sideline and look up. You deviate from where you got to go. So I don't like that aspect of it. But the locker room is spacious. Everything is bigger and better in Texas. I had no problems playing AT.
No, it's certainly
they have an amazing visitors locker room. Better
they
than
got like cheerleaders dancing on podiums. They have everything going on while there's a football game. It's just really weird, man.
I'm pretty sure many people are not complaining about that aspect of the game.
I'm sure not. No, I'm just the old school football guy in me who gets. I'm like, there's a game going on. Isn't anybody watching?
No, they're watching.
Plus, to your point, Jay, I see a lot of fans, Cowboy fans especially, watching the game while they're there on the scoreboard because it's so beautiful in HD. They're actually watching that instead of on the field. And that's like mind-boggling to me. But whatever. I digress. While we're on the subject of the Eagles being underdogs tonight, I'm going to tell you about our friends at MyBookie. We're going to tell you about the beauty of MyBookie. It's not just about watching games, but about turning every second into a potential win. With MyBookie, you can stream the games and live bet them and turn any game day into a payday. Are you guys all ready to up your game? Sign up today. Make your first deposit with the promo code THEBIRDS. That's one word, THEBIRDS, for a sweet deposit bonus up to $1,000. That's promo code THEBIRDS, THEBIRDS, to claim your bonus. This is not just a promo code. It is your secret weapon to get the extra edge on the house. The best part is you don't need to be a sports whiz to win at MyBookie. You can cash in on everything from politics to your favorite shows and then some. Bet anything, anytime, and anywhere, only with MyBookie. All right, as we have been doing in the second hour of the show, we like to take a little bit of a look around of things going on in the NFL. This look around is sponsored by Garage Beer. It's beer-flavored beer. Find yours at drinkgaragebeer.com. So, Adam, people have asked us if Nick Sirianni will bring in Frank Reich, who obviously coached under when he was the offensive coordinator in Indianapolis. Frank Reich was fired by the Panthers 2 weeks ago, which I think this was a first in NFL history, a guy getting fired 2 straight years before the year was even up, which is almost mind-boggling these days. What happened there in your estimation and from what you know, and tell me about the likelihood that he could come here with the Eagles if there is one.
Well, Reich was interviewed by one of the media outlets. I don't remember one, and it sounds like he's done coaching, just to be clear here. So bottom line is that it wasn't working. His offensive structure was very stagnant. Lack of use of the pass target group. Miles Sanders has been horrendous for them. I understand they don't have a great offensive line. I get that part of it. But Sanders is making over $6 million. He got benched for Chuba Hubbard. He got benched 4 weeks ago. Things just didn't go right. They were expecting a lot better offense under Reich, and it just didn't happen. The scheme is really old and outdated. wasn't working. He just couldn't. In fact, look, what's interesting last year, it's ironic in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So he fires Marcus Brady. Nick Sirianni hires him. Now fans want them to hire Frank Reich when Marcus Brady's on the Eagles staff. It's just interesting how that works out.
It is,
but there was no talk about that happening. But, and by the way, somehow Frank Reich's supposed to be like the panacea for their offensive woes. We know that they're very close, but it's just they got to work through this thing. Look, let's look at it this way. I know Shane Steichen's gone; he's now the Colts head coach replacing Reich. But the Eagles have a very good roster. It's just they got to get through this little issue that they're having. But Reich is not the answer. I wish Frank good luck. He's making a lot of money. He's owed a lot of money, by the way, for the next 3 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you're right. It is kind of odd that he can get fired 2 years in a row by 2 different teams before the season ended. That's not good.
Yeah, you think you've seen everything, but that,
yeah.
David Temperate back there. All right, let's focus it back on the Eagles and let's talk about their defense against this Dallas offense. Maybe the biggest surprise, as we've talked about a little bit on the show already lately, is their lack of sacks and overall pressure. This is something, Greg, that you and Clay Harbor talked about on your show Inside the Tape earlier this week on Inside the Birds, and you've observed that the Eagles did not generate much pressure against Brock Purdy. Even with some favorable matchups there on the 49ers offensive line that we all thought that they could capitalize on. When you watched it, I mean, I don't even know what jumps out other than the fact that they're not generating. Is it more from the inside and the absence of Javon Hargrave, or are they doing something on the edges to keep Reddick and Sweat a little bit more in check?
I think that, to be honest with you, and as much as I've loved Josh Sweat, I think that for the last month or so, he's been blocked one-on-one pretty consistently. You can go back to the Week 9 game against Dallas.
Yeah.
Tyron Smith basically handled him the entire game. Reddick hasn't been a big factor either. He normally gets chipped a little more. Teams focus on him a little bit more, but that's nothing new. I mean, this is not a new thing. They've just been not able to pressure the way they normally pressured a year ago. I mean, they're not a high percentage blitz defense relative to the rest of the league. They rely on their down four. That's really the foundation of what their pass defense is their ability to generate pressure without having to blitz. Now, Nick Sirianni this week did indicate that there's going to be changes on defense. Now, he's not going to specify, obviously. From a personnel standpoint, there's not likely to be meaningful changes unless somewhere out of the blue we see something, oh my God, we didn't expect that. Yeah. So what would the changes be? The changes would likely be more pressure. Now, there's multiple kinds of pressure. You don't have to play man on the back end to pressure. There's multiple ways to pressure. So we'll see if in given situations, 3rd and long, 2nd and long, whatever it may be, maybe some first down pressures, based on, tendency of what the Cowboys might do throwing the ball. We'll see if that becomes part of what they do, because when you watch the Cowboys over the last month, their O-line's been really good. Tyron Smith looks like he did 5 years ago. Tyler Smith, the left guard, has really come on. He's a good player. And I think Terrence Steele, the right tackle, has played well the last 3-4 games.
And he started off slow, right? From the
he's usually viewed as the weak link, but he's played well the last 3-4 games. So, this has been a good pass protecting O-line over the last month or so, which of course coincides with Prescott playing, at a really high level.
Adam, how crazy do these numbers that I'm about to read to you sound, knowing how the Eagles are built and what they've been, right? Total pressures. This is since week 8. So almost about a month, a little bit longer now.
Yep.
Total pressures, 21st in the league. Their pressure per drop back, 22nd. Sacks, 27. Just 10 sacks since week 8. Opposing passer rating, 103.9 is 30th in the NFL. And the opponent's completion percentage is 64.5, 21st, and just 9 quarterback hits. Listen, you and I talked about this a lot in the offseason. We said that this is not going to be last year's pass rush. Still, you may never see that again in maybe 20 years, but it's still built around those guys up front. And it's got to be surprising to see how far they've fallen off in the last month.
Well, if you really sum up what's happened here, they have 6 defensive changes, right? The 5 that are gone, and then Maddox, who's missed most of the season. So you're down 6 starters. We consider Nickelback a starter. You've got the oldest secondary in the National Football League. The Eagles ended last season number 5 in the NFL in terms of giving up production to quarterbacks, receivers, and tight ends. They're the worst in the National Football League, Geoff. They're ranked 32nd. Do the math. This is terrible. They're not getting any pressure. You just give out the numbers. They're not getting home. Greg talked about earlier, and I'd love to get Jason and Greg on this about their third down defense. What the heck the problem is? You know, is it the coaching? Is it the scheme? Is it the players? Is it a mixture of both? Whatever the case may be, it's going to be hard because Dak is playing out of his mind. 20 touchdowns in his last 6 games after a slow start. He's been playing magnificent football. Brian Schottenheimer's definitely helping out here. I know he's not calling the plays, but he's an aggressive guy, and I'm sure he's helping McCarthy with this. So it's going to look. There's a reason why, Geoff, the over/under. By the way, though it's dropped a point. It's 51.5. The first game was what, 51? Was it 51 or 52?
Right around
something
there,
like that. Right, and that's when Goddard got hurt. And now we should mention though that Roby didn't play in that last game. He's back tonight, so we'll see how much that helps. Something's got to give here. Greg was talking about potential changes on defense. Schematically, I don't know what you do, but the bottom line is they got to try something else because guys are getting free access, too much room, misdirection. They're giving up just too many big plays, and it's not one specific type of player. We saw Deebo Samuel do it. We saw Jake Ferguson, who they play tonight, do it. Lamb crushed them for 191, guys. It's not one particular thing. That's the craziness of this.
Well, where they've struggled the most, and then Jay, let's jump in. They've struggled the most playing cover 1. That's what on third down. That's where they've really struggled the most, is playing cover 1.
I'll say this is that it's hard to generate pass rush if there's not an initial throwing off of timing, which Greg is talking about in cover 1 or whatever coverage you're playing. It's hard to generate pass rush unless it's immediate. The only way you can get immediate pass rush most of the times if you blitz, right? And we're not a big blitz team. That's one way you can generate pass rush and get somebody in their face right away is blitz. Now, if you're not going to get immediate pass rush and it takes 2.5 seconds now for a guy to beat his man, you have to offer up some type of resistance on the outside. We haven't seen that. I would like to see the stat that says what's the average yard, the average time that the quarterback has to, get the ball out of his hand. But I bet you the Eagles are probably last in the league when it comes to the opposing quarterback throwing a ball at 1.5, 1.6 seconds, whatever it may be. Because Brock Purdy, top of his drop, throw the ball. Call a quick game plan out of his hand. Same way with Josh Allen. There's always targets to throw, and you can't get pressure on the guy if the ball is coming out. And that's the most frustrating thing for a defensive lineman. It's like, bro, no matter what we do, the ball is coming out. So it's like, how are we going to generate that pass rush?
Feels like the old chicken or the egg argument. Is the back end the reason why the front end's not getting sacks, or is the front end the reason the back end's giving up all the yards?
Okay, Jay.
No, I would say we definitely know that the pass rush isn't the same as last year. And Hargrave had a lot of immediate pressure because he was a guy that wins with quickness right away. A lot of our guys are more power based. The guys that we have now they're more power based. Jalen Carter's more of a power based player. So that initial quickness and cutting through a gap, that was immediate from Hargrave. That's something that we're missing, right? And the other aspect of this is yes, what are we going to do when guys in our secondary don't have the confidence to get in people's face?
Which we've seen all year long.
That's the thing that I see. I just see that they don't. There's times where you have an opportunity to go up and get in someone's face. No, there hadn't been a coordinator in the time I played football that said that was like, hey, no, you can't go and bump and run a guy in man to man.
Right.
Right. Unless it's zero, you can do what you want.
Right.
They prefer you to get in his face to throw off the time. And if you have those opportunities and you're reluctant to do that, that's something that the coaches can't do anything about. That's something that has to do with personnel.
Right.
And for the last thing I say, for goodness sakes, can we stop rotating Eli Ricks and Sidney Brown and all these guys? Play one of them.
I agree.
Play one of them.
Why, Jay? From a player's perspective, why is a rotation not working? What do you think happens.
Well, if you're going to go with Sidney Brown, he's going to make mistakes. You got to know that. He's made mistakes all year when it comes to that. But the light at the end of the tunnel is that by the end of the season, he's gotten all those plays out of his system. But when he blows a coverage or something like that, you have to anticipate that and know that as a coach and tell the head coach like that he's a young player. We know that we're going to get it right, and you plan. If you keep benching him, you're stunting his development. That's one. Eli Ricks is just not a slot corner and shouldn't be in there. So it's either you're going to go with a younger guy, Sidney Brown, or go through his ups and downs of him changing his game from safety to nickel corner and roll with that, or you play the veteran that you know who can do it and has the most experience at it. It's just that simple. I don't understand it. And that's the last thing I'll say.
Well, that's important though, because Greg, how much 12 personnel, Greg, do you expect to see from the Cowboys? Because I believe that's usually, unless this changes, when Sean Desai likes to throw the big nickel on the field and get Sidney Brown in there, if I'm not mistaken. Is that something the Cowboys?
Yeah, I mean that's normally the case. I mean, Sidney Brown, by the way, is not a slot corner, and Jay's right. I mean,
not at all.
He never played slot corner in college, so the whole Sidney Brown slot corner thing. Again, I'm not sure why they're doing that. Only they could answer that. But I don't know. But I will say this: two things. Number one, the first thing is when you want to blitz, first of all, you need good blitzers, okay? And I don't believe that either Cunningham or Morrow is that kind of player. And so now you have two linebackers that are not really blitzers, okay? And the other thing is, while Bradley Roby was out, and Bradley Roby is a good blitzer off the slot. He did a ton of that with the Saints, okay? And the Saints were a much more of a pressure team under Dennis Allen with a lot more interesting pressure concepts and coverages behind it that were not pure man, which is what I think the Eagles need to move in that direction. But, Roby, who's now back, he is a good blitzer. So I'll be curious to see what they do. But you are hamstrung in some degree because your linebackers are not really good blitzers.
Would you sort of anticipate tonight, Greg, that cover one is not maybe one of those changes that Nick Sirianni is talking about? Not as much man there on third down, not as much cover one.
Well, they got stuck the last time because, CeeDee Lamb played a lot in the slot in the last game, and that was Eli Ricks. And I couldn't agree more with Jay. Eli Ricks is not a slot corner. He never was, and he's not built for it.
Right.
That's not who he is. So we'll see what they do with Lamb. A couple of things have really shown up the last 5-6 weeks with the Cowboys, okay, in their pass game in particular. And it's certainly been one reason Dak has played really well. Number one, a lot more motion, okay? So you have to have a way to deal with that. Number two, they've gone empty a lot in the last 5 or 6 weeks. And that really helps a quarterback, particularly since their O-line has been playing really well. That really helps a quarterback researching the defense before the ball is snapped. And people can say what they want about Dak. He's had ups and downs throughout his career, but he's a professional quarterback. He sees stuff, and he's a smart guy. So that helps him a lot.
Okay, we're gonna get into Dak a little bit more in a minute. I want to just finish off on pass rush here and any potential changes that might happen. I wonder. Brandon Graham has been used at times. You see him lining up over center in the pass rush. He used to be a guy who was like when they won the Super Bowl, would move inside and rush from the inside nickel position. Is it the time to maybe take Jalen Carter's pass rush snaps a little away and put Brandon Graham or Fletcher Cox, one or the other, taking snaps and getting Brandon on the field a little bit more because he's not playing a whole lot?
Not Jalen Carter seems like, I don't know, Greg. I don't know. Like there's times in the game where I don't see Jalen Carter out there enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't necessarily think that taking his reps away is a thing. I just think that Milton Williams plays a lot now.
Milton Williams does play a lot. Starter in their 5-man front.
Yeah, he plays a lot. And go ahead.
I guess it's a tough deal because at the end of the day, I think that Jordan Davis has played exceptionally well against the run, but he's not shown himself to be a pass rusher. So, when all's said and done, I don't know. Do you put him out there in those kinds of situations? At this point in time, I would say no. I mean, Carter is your best interior pass rusher. And I think he's probably power based, but he's certainly not stiff. He can win with quickness as well. So to me, he's a guy that absolutely needs to be out there with as many snaps as he can realistically play. I mean, he's your best interior player. I know he's a rookie and all that stuff, and I'm sure they want Fletch out there, who's done well when he's played, but Carter's got to be out there, in my view, for as many snaps as he can play.
Okay. One question, though, I want to ask Jason as a former player. When you see Sean Desai not playing Bradley Roby, their nickel, a full complement of snaps, now that he's clearly healthy, I mean, there's no way to definitely know this, but he's over 30, 31 years old. Could it be an age thing where they don't want to overwork him? Because, the Niners game, we know they're not heavy 11 personnel team, but in general, since he's come back, it hasn't been a ton of snaps. So, Jason, what do you think's going on here with Roby and split that nickel roll up a little bit?
I don't know. I couldn't. If I were in a room in this situation, I would like to see it. I just know that I'm not saying that Roby's some world beater corner.
Yeah,
I'm saying that he's the best available option that we have. And based on what Eli Ricks has done, based on what Sidney Brown has done, I just think that there's only one solution, and it's to play Bradley Roby more. So I don't know, and we don't know this. Some guys, you don't. This happens. You have autonomy, but you don't have autonomy. If the organization wants a guy to play, they want the guy to play. I want Eli Ricks to play. And you as a head coach have to go out there, and as a coach, hey, these are the guys that have. I've literally been told that they want the younger guy to play, Jay. You just got to sit back there. You've done nothing wrong. We know what you can do. We want the younger guy. I've been told that multiple times. So with that being said, that could be the case in this situation, but it's still speculation. Right. I do know this, is that Bradley Roby is a better corner and a better communicator than what we have out there right now.
Glad you mentioned that communication element, especially as we've kind of moved the conversation back to the back end of the defense, which, it got torn apart by the San Francisco 49ers. There were missed tackles. There were players out of place. There were schematic mismatches that were obvious. And Greg, one of the great points that you and Clay Harbor discussed on Inside the Tape a couple of days ago was this concept that is sort of sweeping the league that the 49ers used against the Eagles of 4 strong. So I'll let you kind of verbalize what you saw on tape from this 4 strong concept and how that worked against the Eagles.
Yeah, 4 strong is something that, we started noticing in the matchup room with all my guys earlier this season, that a lot more and more teams are doing it. And it could well be, just to give a little background, it could be a response to the quarters zone structures that teams are playing, because 4 strong attacks zone coverage because you don't have enough bodies to one side of the zone unless you're going to push everybody over, which is, one thing you can do. But when it comes off motion, which it did almost all the time when the 49ers did it's a very, very difficult thing to defend because the Niners did not line up statically. I mean, how many times, I'm sure you can still picture Samuel starting in jet motion, then doing orbit motion back to where he came from, and you get 4 strong, okay? Purdy had 29 dropbacks. They went 4 strong on 8 of them, which is a lot. And he was 7 of 8 for over 90 yards on 4 strong concepts. And, that's something that is really difficult to deal with when you play zone coverage. And then keep in mind, if you want to deal with that, on the backside of 4 strong, where you have your boundary X receiver, the single receiver, if that guy's a big-time guy, then you got to match up man to him. And depending on your secondary, that could be a problem too. So, Christian Ellis, by the way, and again, who knows why he was cut, but he had huge problems sort of dealing with the 4 strong concept.
Well, there were like 2.
He wasn't the only one.
He wasn't the only one. No,
I was going to bring that. That's what I was just about to say, that they got him I think at least 2 times on it. But I feel like when you looked at that game as a whole, he's not the biggest culprit per se. I mean, there's not always one guy who stands out. But, I felt like him getting waived, Jay, sort of made it seem like, from a fan standpoint, you may not see the tape of the ultimate team, he must have been the biggest issue that the Eagles had against the 49ers. And I don't know that I would say he was.
No, he wasn't. He wasn't the only guy. There was a lot of mental errors in the backside. There was times where they needed to shift over the defensive front. That Christian Ellis and the guys in the secondary in the linebacker position were telling the guys to move over. They didn't move over, and they got gapped. Right, they got hit in that gap that they didn't shift over into. Sidney Brown ran to the wrong side of the field in cover 3 one time, which led to a Kittle scamper down the sideline early in the game. That started everything. That was a Sidney Brown thing. So there was a bunch of mistakes that being had, and there's always going to be a scapegoat. But Greg is right. So when you're a quarter-based team and you have 4 receivers or eligible, targets to your strong side, that's what it is, 4 strong to your strong side. You don't have enough defenders. Now the backside safety has to make a decision, and the defensive coordinator has to make a decision. Do I change the coverage? Right? I can easily roll that into a cover 3 now, but here's the thing. Now the offense is dictating my coverage, which they're going to get me at some point doing that. Or do I have the backside safety come over in coverage, right, toward the middle of the field, but lower level? And but again, like you said, the backside guy, which a lot of times in that game was Bradbury. Do I want that to be a one-on-one situation? No, I don't want that. So great game plan by Kyle Shanahan.
So interesting.
Go ahead, Adam.
No, I was just going to say it's been a tough go. I'm so interested to see what kind of personnel changes they could make. Again, is it just schematics? Because people want them to blitz. They're not a good blitzing team. We know they like to play heavy zone. They're like top 12 in man, but still their man coverage is still only low 30s anyway. So it's going to be tough. And you look at the way that Mike McCarthy and Brian Schottenheimer put this offense together. They're super aggressive. Now it's not a weather game, so we don't have to worry about that. And they're going to spread them out. So this is, I don't know how much you can get done in less than a week in terms of schematics, but we're probably going to learn early on what kind of defense they're going to have and whether they could slow Dallas down at all.
I agree with that, Adam. They're going to spread them out. And then, based on what Dallas has done in recent weeks, they're going to feel that they can protect. Now, if we see early that Sweat and Reddick or even the inside guys can get pressure, then maybe we say, oh, this game could be a little different.
Interesting, yeah.
Right, could be a little more interesting. But they're going to believe they can block with their 5 offensive linemen. And by the way, as they did in the last game, even though they lost it, they didn't lose because of their pass offense, as we all know. So I'm talking the Week 9 game against Dallas Philly. They're going to believe they can protect, and they'll spread them out, and they'll see how Sean Desai and that Eagles pass defense handles it.
Yeah, I think in our back end that we are a zone drop team, which is a dead concept in most of the National Football League. We're one of the only teams in the league that plays zone the way that we do. It should be more of a zone match element to it, where there's guys carrying, guys being rerouted. 2 things that we don't do. That we don't match in zones well, and we never reroute. At anywhere on the field, our guys do not touch people. I don't know if that's being taught, but it has to be, because it's very, very hard not to touch a guy within 5 yards. And we just don't, that's not something that we do particularly well. And nothing too, we don't recognize scenarios and understand where we are. Like, it's 2nd and 15 last week. Darius Slay is 12 yards off of Ayuk, gives up a 5-yard hitch. But by the time he was in position, he ended up with 12 yards. What is that the coach? Or is that is that just not being aware of your surroundings and understanding the situation? A 5-yard hitch route should be a 7-8 yard gain max.
Yeah, because then that just gave the Niners at that point a very makeable 3rd down compared to what it could have been. Yeah. So you brought this up and I wanted to bring this up in this platform here, because you and Quentin Michael on the Q&A podcast on Inside the Birds have been talking about this, I feel like, for 10 straight weeks now, and we're only 14 into the season, right? There was another play, I think it was the Jennings catch it might have been the touchdown, it was over the middle, where he's not covered, but 2 Eagles are covering a different guy, and it did not look like it was an intentional double coverage. It looked like there was a switch off communication issue there, the way they reacted after. You guys have pointed this out week after week after week that 1, 2, 3 times a game, you're seeing that communication, that switch off not happening, and it hurts them at the most critical moments. I've got to say, is that the point where you start to say, where's the coaching points here? How can that happen week after week after week after week?
Yeah, and that's the thing that, like, here's my thing, because I want to spin this the right way.
Mm-hmm.
For the life of, most of this year, I've always been very optimistic on the Eagles secondary being able to figure it out. The reason being is because a lot of times that they're beat, there's an easy coachable solution to why they were beat, not understanding leverage, Blankenship on the IU touchdown, understanding that that's a naked concept and that there's going to be a crosser. So you just run blindly to where the crosser is going to be. Right. That's something that comes with experience. But once things start to happen and you're in week 13 or 14 now, and it hasn't happened, you begin to say, okay, maybe this team just can't get right in this area. Right. So with that being said, our bunches and condensed split concepts, if a team does that enough, if they do it 10 times, we're going to bust about 4 of those at this rate. Mm-hmm. We're going to, if we're
and look, the Eagles play a close game every week, so 3 or 4 plays like that.
Yeah, we're going to somebody's going to bust one of those.
Right.
It's inevitable at this rate. Now, and yes, that's coaching. You just cannot say that any other way. You can't have guys in there that are repeating the same mistakes over and over and over again.
Well, let me ask you a question. Maybe, again, Jay certainly knows more about this than I do, but maybe the loss of Denard Walker was a whole lot bigger than we
Denard Wilson.
I was actually just about to bring that up, Greg. So it's a good point.
That's what I meant. My mistake.
Yep, gotcha.
He's in Baltimore now, and that secondary has played lights out with a lot of guys who are not big names.
Mm-hmm.
Geno Stone. Who's Geno Stone?
Brandon Stevens has been playing outside corner all year long, and I guarantee no one saw him going into this season as an outside corner.
Right.
Cal Hamilton was, at the beginning of last year, they were talking about him possibly being a bust.
You could almost argue he's the key to everything they do on defense.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. And that's how, and you never know, like when you have a winning team, you never know which element that somebody's going to pluck that's going to mean the most. But as of right now, the secondary and their confidence and their ability to run a simple defense without blowing the coverage, I don't get it. I've never seen it like this.
Yeah. I really didn't think by week 14 we were still going to be having this. You figured they would settle on a rotation and I'm not saying they're not coaching it, but clearly there's just something. I mean, this is a clear problem for this team for several weeks in a row, and it keeps happening. And again, there's rotations going on. There's kids like Eli Ricks playing, and they have no experience. So you can understand it. But I think what you said, Greg, about the loss of Denard Wilson, and then maybe the idea that they have 3 different coaches now in the secondary. They're DK McDonald is the secondary coach. They have the assistant secondary coach whose name suddenly escapes me. And then they have the nickelbacks coach in Ronell Williams, I believe. So,
correct.
I don't know what the voices and the flow is like in there.
Yeah, I don't know.
I've known Adam longer than you, Jeff. So Adam knows one of my core beliefs, which I actually learned. I didn't make this up. I learned a lot of stuff from people a lot smarter, and I try to apply it. But one of my core beliefs is that teams tell you how they feel about their players by how they deploy them. Okay,
yep.
Because they're going to put them in the situations they feel they can execute best, or the flip side of that is they put them in situations where they feel they won't compromise the ability to function at a reasonably good level. Okay, so they told us what they think of James Bradberry. We don't have to figure that out. They told us. Now, they may feel they don't have a better player than James Bradberry on the roster, and that's, and again, they tied him up. Adam has discussed this. He deals with that. I don't, that they tied him up with a contract to where it'd be very difficult to do much with him, but they've told you that he's a concern for them in the secondary. And when you have a concern, that can show up any given week, depending on who you're playing and how the game plays out.
Greg, can I?
So Greg,
Oh, go ahead,
real
go ahead.
quick. So last year, Jason, last year, Jeff and I would talk to teams and we kept hearing, man, if we could protect, we're going after 24, who's Bradbury, but they couldn't protect the opponent's offensive line couldn't protect. This year they're able to protect, and you're seeing what's happened. And you're getting those results, and it's not like they could turn to anyone else. Well, Ricks is a nice story, but he's not good enough to be out there. So I just want to throw that in there because this is the reality that they're dealing with.
Yeah, I think Vontae Max would make a big difference, but the way they're being deployed is something else. But let's talk about this. Let's talk about the mentality. There's a different thing of play, right? Being a professional enough to know your craft and not bust assignments. You're a professional.
Yep.
Right. That's what this is. This is. You're a professional athlete. You're a professional at what you do. You don't make those mistakes over and over again. That's what makes you a professional, not an amateur. Right. So if I'm going to be beat, it's going to be because of a great scheme, or it's going to be because I'm just not as good of a player as the opposing player. Now, the 49ers told us what we think of, or what they thought about the Eagles secondary with their demeanor from their receivers. Their receivers were pancaking our secondary, getting in their faces afterwards, and nobody got a personal foul or anything. That's not how this game goes. As a coach and as a player, you don't allow guys to get in your face at all. If I was on the field, and this is a true story, no matter where we played, Deshaun felt emboldened being the smallest guy to talk the most junk because I was out there. That's how it was. And the other team knew that. They know Jason will go after your knees, and that's the way we played the game. I would try to knock you out if it come down to it. That's the way it was. You played the Steelers, and you did that the entire game. That's the way the game was. You can't play a football game where the opposing team feels like that you're a punk out there, and you don't do anything to dispel that or to, squash that thought process at all. No, you can't allow Blankenship to get pushed down by Jennings and allow IU to walk up in his face like, what you going to do without getting a personal foul? No way.
Right. Got to see a little fight.
If I'm going to take a penalty, that's the time to take one.
By the way, did you see Deshaun throw you a nice little bone in his retirement press conference talking about your block on his touchdown against the Giants?
Yeah, knocked myself out. So
you've said that yourself.
Yeah, it's true.
To be honest, you have said that yourself. You knocked the guy out and you knocked yourself out.
It was horrible technique. Yeah, but that was the way that the game was played back then. You couldn't play in that era with Brian Dawkins and Palomalu and Ed Reed and Rodney Harrison. These are certified guys that would, if they didn't play football, a lot of these guys would be terrorists out on the streets without the discipline. You get what I mean? Yeah. And so that mentality, you couldn't play like soft. And I felt that the Eagles secondary were soft.
There you go. All right, we're going to move on in a second. I just have to ask you this because Shaq Leonard, could play today. And last year, I think we all were very, very surprised by how much of an impact Linval Joseph made in his first game coming off the street. I've tried to make the argument, and I could be completely wrong about this, that maybe it's a little bit easier for a D lineman to do that because his job is like, push guy back, stop run, maybe get quarterback if he's on the field there. Whereas linebacker, you got keys, you got different coverages, you're stopping the run, you're playing the pass. I mean, I don't know if Shaq Leonard can go in there and do the Linval Joseph thing and play the game. He may be asked to if there's injuries, but am I off base on that, or can he just go in there and
street? I mean, he's not coming off.
Correct. I know he's not off the street, but it's been a little bit since he played.
Yeah, he's been playing. The thing is, and we talked about this earlier, is that every defense has similar concepts. You just have to be able to figure that out with Shaq Leonard.
Right.
How you can allow him to, think about your defense in the way of his old defense, right? So, hey, for Indianapolis, this was Star, and for the Eagles, this is Moon. And let's marry those two concepts in your mind or whatever. But there will be some type of package for him. And we'll see how it goes. He has to play.
Yeah. I mean, Greg, would coverage be an issue for him at this point, in a new defense? And I don't know how – you watched the tape. You can tell us how you thought. You already said, look, the Colts benched him. They waived him. They're paying him all this money to not play. So clearly that's not great. But obviously the Cowboys are probably sitting there wondering what packages they have and maybe how they can counter.
Well, he certainly can play. If you want him to match, depending on how the Eagles want to play, if they play man coverage, certainly Leonard can play man coverage because you got that guy. The question becomes if they want to start doing more things with zone type pressures where you have to match routes, and some teams do those kinds of things differently. If it's a 3-by-1 set and you pressure, who's going to match 2? Who's going to match 3? How are you going to run out to do those matches? So different teams can do that differently. My guess is he wouldn't be asked to do that this week because he doesn't have enough time to master all that.
But he can be a blitzer, and he's very effective at it.
Yes, he can do that. He's a better blitzer. That's a great point, Jay. He's a better blitzer than Morrow or Cunningham.
There you go.
Well, the Eagles could use that because their numbers lately against the other team's numbers against the Eagles blitz right now is astronomically high. They're and good. So the Eagles could use a little shakeup in that department. All right, so let's talk a little bit. We'll finish it up with this Dallas passing game that we've touched on. It is certainly caught on fire a little bit. The last time the Eagles played, I remember watching the tape the next day or 2 or 8 days later, and I thought to myself, after the Eagles Cowboys game, the first one, maybe Brandon Cooks and Dallas and Dak Prescott will have a conversation because I felt that there were some times where Cooks was getting wide open. I think he was matched up a few times against Bradbury and sometimes against Slay. And then sure enough, the next week he wound up having 9 catches, 173 yards. I'm basically saying I saw it coming, everybody. So I told him to do that. No, but clearly Cooks has 3 touchdowns in his last 4 games. We've seen Ferguson play well. We know CeeDee Lamb's playing well. And now Cooks starting to come into the mix, Greg. I mean, I feel like that's made Dallas really prolific over the last few weeks scoring the ball. Would you agree that he is starting to really insert himself into this offense?
Yeah, it's not. I think they've inserted him, with the way
that's what I mean. Yeah.
Play, yes. And they've also inserted Jake Ferguson, who's become a really critical player for them because he can work the middle of the field. He's a 3-level dimension. We talked about third down. Prescott was 9 for 12 for 139 and a touchdown. Was not sacked on third down in that game. And if you go back and look at what Purdy was on third down, what Josh Allen was on third down, the numbers are frightening if you're an Eagles fan. So, they have really got to figure out what their approach is going to be on third down because that's the whole goal. I mean, obviously, and we're not talking about 3rd and 1s here, 3rd and 2s. We're talking about 3rd and 6, 7, 8, 9. When you get teams in those situations, you have got to get off the field. If you can't get off the field there, it makes it really, really difficult.
Adam, what's really interesting about some of Dak Prescott's stats, right? I mean, he's top 5 in almost every major category. Passing yards, he's 5th. Passing touchdowns 1st. Completion percentage tied for 2nd. QB rating 2nd. Yards per attempt 4th. And people, when they let Kellen Moore go to the Chargers, right? And Mike McCarthy said, I'm going to take over and be more into this offense. I think people thought, oh, this is going to be the worst thing, right? For the Cowboys. And by the way, what do you know about his appendix and his ability to coach tonight?
Yeah, he's going to coach tonight. He's told their personnel people and their coaches that he's going to be able to coach tonight, and we expect that to happen. Good for him. He had an emergency appendectomy, but he's going to be okay. Now, obviously, he's a player. He's not playing this week, but here's the thing, though. He's got to be on the sidelines. They better have someone to protect him so he doesn't get, if anyone gets close to him, got to be careful. But, the thing is, I've said this about Brian Schottenheimer. He did a phenomenal job with the Seahawks. He had philosophical differences with Pete Carroll. Carroll's a run game guy. Schotty could do both, but he wants to be more aggressive, particularly early on. And then when you see the situation here, these last 6 games where Dak's got 20 touchdown passes. Look at the downfield passing. I know Greg talked about the offensive line, and that's true. He's got a lot of time to throw. And then the movement. Look at him throwing on the run. Like, this is not what we've seen from him, right?
I'm so glad you mentioned that. I'm so glad you mentioned that because over the last 5-6 weeks, and I've done Dak Prescott every year in the summertime, Adam, you guys know this, that I go through 250, 300 dropbacks of Dak Prescott every summer. He's one of probably the 10 quarterbacks I really look at in detail every summer. And I came away after these last 2 years thinking, well, this guy, he doesn't really move much anymore. He's kind of a pure pocket player and pretty good at it, but he's a pure pocket player. Well, this year, particularly over the last 5 or 6 weeks, his movement ability And he made big plays on third down against the Eagles with movement in week 9, but he's done that against everybody. He's moving exceptionally well. He's seeing the field well. That's been an added dimension to his game that has been a big factor in what's gone on the last 5-6 weeks.
It did almost seem that after he suffered that really gruesome ankle injury, what was that, 3 years ago, that had changed how he wanted to be as a quarterback. He wanted to stay more in the pocket. But how much of a difference are those, Jay, when you watch Dallas tape, now that he's making a little bit more second reaction plays, what has that done for their offense?
It does a lot. He picks up third downs now with his legs as well. So that's a different element. The thing that I like about Dak is that what he's doing now is that he's an opportunist when it comes to one-on-one coverage down the field. If you have it down the field, he's throwing it up there. And you love that as a receiver. That's what he wants. We saw it in the game versus the Eagles. They were able to come back because of downfield throws and getting those pass interference calls. And they get a lot of pass interference calls because he throws the ball up to those guys, either coming down with the pass interference or incompletion, right? So, and I think that's something that he's doing. And then CeeDee Lamb is winning. That's just, and Jake Ferguson is a winner at tight end. Has very good feet. The guy has very good feet, gets open versus man-to-man coverage, and we know what Brandon Cooks has been and done in this league, and they're starting to find him. So it's coming together for them when it comes to all of their pass targets being included. But I think Jake Ferguson has been a revelation for them.
Yeah, there's a lot of it seems like he threads a real tight window to Jake. He is not afraid to throw it to him in some
No, that's spaces. The other thing. I'm glad you said that too, Jeff, because one thing that has really stood out with Dak is he's been very aggressive throwing the ball, but smart aggressive. Ferguson he's able to run the seam, and that's a really important element in this offense, running the middle seam. And when Dak has seen 2 shell coverage, split safety coverage, he's thrown those balls. And that has really been helpful in the context of what they do in the pass game.
Greg, did you when you watch his college tape out of Wisconsin, did you think Ferguson ran it this well? Boy, he gets down the seam like, wow.
Yeah, he gets that. I can't remember what his 40 time was. I don't remember specifically, Adam, but but no. I mean, the short answer would be no. Did I immediately think of him like that? No.
Yeah, neither did Graham Ertz apparently.
He had a route.
I said neither did Graham Ertz apparently. I think that was his quarterback at Wisconsin.
He had a route that was broken up by Woolen last week, and it ended up being a one-on-one backside, and he ended up in like either a corner or a fade or something like that. But his subtlety to get open on a corner and get in position to catch the ball was very, very impressive to me. Now, Woolen made it up by knocking the pass down, but him to get in that position, I was like, oh, that was a pretty special move in order to have the tact to get open, because he was able to stick him, get in his toes and stick him and get around them. And I was like, that's pretty impressive for a tight end.
All right.
One of the best corners in the league.
I got one last breakdown analysis question for you, Jason Avant. Before I get to that, we got to remind everybody that our great production team, James and Zach, are back behind the wheels again, bringing Inside the Birds pregame live to you in high definition with new graphics, videos, and more. And we just want to thank them all for all their behind-the-scenes work to bring this great show to life. James, Zach, we appreciate you so much. And if anybody wants to reach out to them to get their podcast going, their video log going, you can email us insidethebirds@gmail.com. We will make the connection for you. All right, Jay. We're going to get into the predictions in a second, but you kind of beat the chest as you should have after that game a couple weeks ago about the cowboying going on. The Dallas always figures out a way. I mean, the Jake Ferguson gets tackled at the fraction of a goal line, right? Greg always says it's a game of fractions. Fractions matter. Dak ran out of bounds, I believe, on a 2-point conversion. That would have made a difference. And of course, they have first and goal at the 5, and Dak takes a sack. Are you still, they're playing hot right now. Are you still like the Dallas has to show me that they're not going to stub their toe here?
They're going to have to prove to the entire country that they can show up in these moments, right? So, but they do have a 14-game home win streak, and that's something that's real, and they play better at home. And but do I think that they have the ability to foul up a game? Yes, I definitely believe that.
All right. Well, that's a great segue into our picks segment of our game and our player of the game. Before we do that, do you guys know what's just as frustrating as watching your favorite team losing? It's trying to find reasonable tickets online. That's why you need Game Time. It's the fast, easy way to buy tickets for sporting events, concerts, theater shows near you with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. You can go on the Game Time app right now. Adam might show it to you because Adam's in love with the Game Time app. He's been thumbing through it on his phone lately. You can find tickets to see the Birds, Flyers, Sixers, local college hoops. You can even see the Nutcracker at the Academy of Music. The best part is Game Time offers event cancellation protection and job loss protection. It's the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. They got the all-in prices that show you the total upfront, and you can see the view from your seat so you know exactly what to expect at checkout. Game Time's obsessed with helping you save money. They offer deals right up to the start of an event and even hour after the start. Their zone deals let you pick the section while Game Time picks the seats to give you the best savings. And don't forget about the Game Time guarantee. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less money, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code BIRDS, one word, BIRDS, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use the redeem code BIRDS, BIRDS, for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, let's wrap this up. We're getting into our player of the game segment. I'm going to start with you, Jason. Who have you predicted to be your player of the game?
I don't like my player of the game, and I don't like the feeling that I have by doing this. I feel like a traitor today, but I have
dirty.
to do it. It's in my mind here, and my player of the game is Jake Ferguson, tight end for the Dallas Cowboys.
Ooh, wow!
Can't blame you. Can't blame you. He did have a pretty good game the first time around against the Eagles, and this close to winning the game for them. And
with the shuffling at linebacker and Shaq having to play the first day, it doesn't look great for us.
All right. So Jake Ferguson is Jason's player of the game. Greg, who do you see as the player of the game today?
Oh, I'm on the same side of the ball as Jay. Until they prove that they can stop CeeDee Lamb, I kind of feel like CeeDee Lamb is going to have a pretty good game. He's had a lot of pretty good games this year. Yep. So I'm going to pick CeeDee Lamb.
CeeDee Lamb is on some kind of record pace right now with his catches. I mean, he's been unbelievable this year.
He's had 7 catches in every game, I think, this year. I think it's something like that, right?
Yeah. Do you guys remember when if you had 90 catches for 1,182 yards and 7 touchdowns, you had a pretty good year? Like you were like, hey, that's a pretty good year. And there's still 4 games left to play for him. So including tonight, that's amazing. All right, Adam, we go over to you. Who is the player of the game for you?
All right, before I give that real quick, here are their Eagles inactives. Tanner McKee, as usual. Their quarterback, Rashad Penny, inactive once again. Moro Ojomo. So Apetta and Albert O with Goddard playing tonight is inactive. And obviously Shaq Leonard will make his debut as we knew he would. Dallas, Michael Parsons is playing tonight. He has the illness. They did add him to the injury report. But so who's my player of the game? I'm strongly believing Hurts is going to bounce back in a big way. Could be a knockdown, drag-out fight. Should be super high scoring. Hurts is my player of the game.
Like we mentioned, a lot of man coverage. Could be a lot of good opportunities for Hurts to get his game back. All right, so Jalen Hurts for you. For me, I'm going with Dallas. Goddard. Dallas Goddard. I think he's going to have a big boost to the run game and the pass, maybe even the RPO game, everything. Just help that offense get back on track. And you heard him last week. He really wanted to get out there. So he's chomping at the bit. And I see some good matchups for Dallas Goddard today. So Dallas Goddard, my player of the game. Let's get into our picks. Obviously, the Eagles, again, are 3.5-point underdogs, a big over-under of 51.5. Did you say it changed, Adam, or is it still 51.5?
Yeah, it's 51.5. It was 52.5 earlier in the week. I don't quite understand how this works other than one side, they want to even it out so that the books don't lose money. So they want to even it out. But yeah, it's 51.5 is our latest.
All right. So then, Adam, I'll go right back to you. Who wins this game? What's the score?
I've got an Eagles 33, Cowboys 30 in a high-scoring game. We don't have to worry about weather. I like the fact that Dallas plays a lot of man coverage, and I think Hurts is going to bounce back with it. Got it being back. There could be a crazy play or two. Dak is going to have his moments, but someone's going to make a mistake for them. They're going to cowboy, as Jason likes to say.
Oh, all right. Wow. Did it hurt you to pick the over for maybe just the second or third time ever in your life?
I'll probably be wrong. It'd be like 17-16. Yeah, something like that.
All right. Well, hey, Eagles fans would love it. That would be a cover, obviously, a win outright. Eagles 33, Cowboys 30. Says Adam. Greg, I turn it to you. Do you remember? First, this is always a two-part question for you. Do you remember your score?
Well, I know I didn't pick the present score of the Raiders-Vikings game late in the fourth quarter, which is 0-0.
No, you didn't.
No, I didn't. I picked a high-scoring game. That was my initial thought. I'm not sure, but I think did I pick 30-27?
No, you picked 30-27. My fault.
And I believe I picked the Cowboys.
You did.
And that was a coin flip.
All right. So you got the Cowboys. They don't cover, but they are getting the over on that. Jason, you picked Jake Ferguson as your player of the game. How are you looking at your game score prediction?
I don't love it. Like I said, I don't love it, but I got to go with the Cowboys this game.
Wow.
14 wins at home, seeing the way that they lost the game the last time they played the Eagles, and the Eagles scouring the earth trying to figure out their secondary problem with Dak playing at an MVP level. I just don't think it's a great solution, a great combination tonight.
Wow,
so
and you're also
Cowboys
picking a cover.
winning 34-30.
That's a cover for the Cowboys. Wow, you need to go shower with a Brillo pad after. You must be feeling all sorts of dirty.
Yeah, it doesn't. I don't want to ever have to do this again. But hey,
there you go. You know what? For some reason, guys, as we finish this off, I kind of think that the scoring is going to be a little lower than than you guys and the public see it. I have the Eagles winning 28-23. I believe that's the score of the first matchup. I just happen to randomly pick it 28-23. I do think the Eagles offense will get back on track. I think there'll be some opportunities to strike. This time they just got to make sure that they play a complete game and, don't worry, have the Dallas Storm back there in the fourth quarter. So Eagles win 28-23. Big thanks as always to Garage Beer, My Bookie, HelloFresh, Game Time, James and Zach, our production team. And thanks to all of you for joining us and watching. Make sure you check out our coverage of today's game immediately after. We'll have Andrew DeCecco's report on insidethebirds.com. And of course, Inside the Birds post-game live, myself, Adam, and former Eagles tight end Clay Harbor. It'll be on our YouTube page and other socials. For Jason Avant and Greg Cosell and Adam Caplan, I'm Geoff Mosher. Thanks for watching another Inside the Birds pregame live. Everybody enjoy the game.